The most important thing we can do right now is sit still and do nothing. Well, that's what this video is about. But before we continue, please consider subscribing to support us. Section 2 of 7, the first lessons. Albina had never been inside a space so unapologetically imperfect. The workshop smelled faintly of earth and ash, sunlight cutting through high. Dusty windows and scattering across shelves crowded with bowls and plates, each in some stage of incompletion. A cracked vase leaned against a wall. A chipped bowl sat on a workbench as though waiting for company. There was no symmetry here, no gleaming rows or polished surfaces. Instead, the place hummed with something unfamiliar to her, life in all its unevenness. At the center of it sat Hiroki. He was an old man, his back slightly curved, his movements unhurried. When Albina first introduced herself, she noticed the deep creases around his eyes, as if the sun had spent decades sketching lines into his face. His hands bore stains of lacquer and clay, his nails rimmed in permanent shadow. And yet, when he lifted her broken teacup to examine it, he did so with the gentleness of a monk holding a relic. "This one has been loved," he murmured, tilting it so the fracture caught the light. "It will be beautiful again." Albina bristled at the word beautiful. To her, beauty had always meant flawless glaze, symmetry, precision. This cup was broken. Nothing about it resembled her idea of perfection. But she held her tongue, waiting for him to explain. He set the pieces carefully on a cloth. "Kintsugi," he said, as if naming a friend. "We do not hide the cracks, we fill them. We give them light." The lesson began not with gold, but with patience. Hiroki showed her the lacquer, thick and sticky, its drying time measured not in minutes, but in days. He demonstrated how to align the shards, brush the lacquer into the break, and hold them steady until they belonged to one another again. His hands moved slowly, each motion deliberate, as though he were less concerned with the result than with the act itself. Albina tried to copy him, but her grip was too tight, her brush strokes hurried. She pressed the pieces of a test bowl together, only for lacquer to squeeze out messily along the seam. The more she tried to wipe it clean, the more smeared and chaotic it became. "You rush," Hiroki observed mildly, not scolding, simply noting. "It's too slow," Albina muttered. "The lacquer is thick, the pieces slide. It doesn't want to stay." "Nothing wants to stay when you push it too hard." He smiled faintly, adjusting the shards with feather-light touch. "You must let the lacquer find its way. You guide, you do not force." Albina clenched her jaw. She had come here prepared to learn a technique, not philosophy. Yet every attempt she made ended in frustration. The brush slipped, the lacquer streaked. The pieces shifted out of alignment just as she thought they were steady. By the end of the day, her fingers were tacky with resin, her patience shredded. She returned to her apartment fuming. Her own shelves of perfect porcelain seemed to glare at her, as if mocking the clumsy seams she had made in Hiroki's workshop. She considered abandoning the lessons altogether. Why waste time fumbling when she could return to her controlled world of perfection? And yet, when she sat at her desk and looked at her grandmother's broken teacup, something stopped her. The jagged edges seemed to wait, not accusing, not forgiving, just patient. For the first time, Albina wondered if perhaps the cup was less interested in being fixed than in teaching her how to see differently. The next morning, she returned to Hiroki's workshop. The lesson stretched into weeks. Each time she tried to hurry the process, and each time Hiroki simply watched her, offering a phrase here, a gesture there. When she grew impatient with the drying lacquer, he handed her another piece to study while waiting. When she demanded to know the right amount of gold to use, he shook his head. "Gold is not for covering, it is for revealing. Each crack asks for its own light." Slowly, the words began to settle inside her. Slowly, her hands began to loosen. One afternoon, she caught herself holding two pieces of a small plate, her breath matching the rhythm of her heartbeat, the world narrowing into the seam where lacquer met ceramic. She realized she had stopped thinking about the result. For a moment, she was only present with the break. It was the first time in years she felt time pass without trying to control it. Over the weeks, Albina learned to move with the rhythm of the repair. She learned to read the pieces like a palmist reading lines in the palm of a hand. Each shard had a story, a place of its own. Some pressed close like shy lovers. Others overlapped like pages in a well-read book. Some broke cleanly, their edges crisp and exact. Others crumbled into shards so delicate they threatened to slip through her fingers. In the quiet of the workshop, surrounded by the scent of lacquer and dust, Albina found herself relaxing into this slow, painstaking work. It wasn't the precision she had once valued that made the repairs sing, but the imperfection, the way each seam became a testament to resilience. She even began to appreciate the seams that marred the surface of the teacups and plates, the tiny divots and scrapes that told tales of a life well lived. As the weeks turned into months, Albina's world outside the workshop began to shift. What had seemed essential to her success in the gallery suddenly appeared suffocating, the need to dazzle, to impress, to sell. She began turning down commissions that didn't feel right, angering potential clients with her frank critiques, losing lucrative collaborations over a misplaced brushstroke. To her surprise, none of it mattered. The gallery remained afloat, not with the showy pieces, but with the ones that sang of life lived and lessons learned, the ones that whispered stories instead of shouting them. One evening, as the sky bled into hues of burnt umber and rose madder, Hiroki looked up from a plate he was repairing. "Do you remember when you came in, full of anger and impatience?" he said, not unkindly. "You wanted to fix things quickly to get them over with?" Albina nodded, feeling the heat creep up her neck. How could he remember? "You wanted to hide the cracks, to make them disappear," he continued. "I asked you then, why hide the cracks? They are where the light enters." His words echoed in the sudden silence. Albina looked down at the plate in her hands. It was one of her own, a piece she had thrown in a fit of inspiration. In her eagerness to finish it, she had thrown it too thinly. Now it was cracked, not from an impact, but from her own impatience. "Why do we fix them?" Hiroki prompted gently. Albina traced the line of the crack with her fingertip. "Because the light makes them beautiful," she whispered, surprised by the conviction in her voice. A slow smile spread across Hiroki's face, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Then go," he said, handing her the plate. "Let the light in, and that's all for today. Thank you for watching." If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support our work, please subscribe and share your thoughts. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.